Okay, thanks everyone for joining us for our free webinars every week. We've got a couple of people here live in the Zoom room, and anyone who's on our Facebook page can also, I am recording. Yes, so we're all good to go. And this topic, this week, what we're doing is we're talking about going down the rabbit hole of self, rabbit hole of consciousness. And I'm just going to jump into Facebook so I can see all the beautiful people there and see if anyone's got any questions or comments, especially in this topic, going down the rabbit hole of consciousness, of self, of awareness. It's a super fun, super cool process. And also what's coming through is if it doesn't work for you right away, that's okay. It does take a little bit of practice, but practice makes perfect. And usually the reason why you may not be getting the information you want is because you may be too in your head, if you know what that means. So if you do this Love for Humanity work, you will know what to do when you are too in your head. Mainly being in your head is from a place of protection and survival, and the thing that drives protection and survival is the ego. That's its job. So if you need to know what to do with the ego, you can pop a message and I will send you through the link as to what to do with the ego. We just technically call it out, take a couple of deep breaths, and literally that voice that's telling us that we can't do things and that we are stuck, or even beliefs, everything that, and I'm even going down the rabbit hole of egoic thoughts, which is super fun because to be able to have thoughts that have always existed and then literally not to have them anymore is really, really fun as well. So if you do want to do that work, you know, pop a comment or a question or whatever, and I will share that video with you as well. And we've got Peggy, we've got Julie, we've got Kristen and Elena live. Nice to see you guys. So and get your pens and paper out. Sorry, I'm just trying to get everything organized here. I'm just going to mute you, Peggy, just so you don't hear any background stuff. There we go. And there I am on Facebook. Okay, sorry for that delay. Let me see, Kristen there. Oh, we've got Renelle on Facebook Live as well. Okay, so grab your pens and paper, and literally I'm going to just explain. This process is super easy, super fun, going down the rabbit hole of self and consciousness. The reason why we do this is just getting to know who we are, what's going on within us, but to literally understand why we think these things, why we feel these things, why these things are happening. So you can use going down the rabbit hole of consciousness, of self, of awareness, literally just to find out anything to do with thoughts, anything to do with feelings, any awarenesses. And I will say awarenesses is the first big step in going down the rabbit hole of self and consciousness. So write that down. Number one is awarenesses is the first step. So when I say awarenesses, literally an awareness is something that you're recognizing, something that you've noticed. That's just what an awareness is. So just write down, if you've got a piece of paper there, I want you just to write down something that you've just noticed about yourself that you'd like to go down the rabbit hole of awareness, rabbit hole of subconscious and self and consciousness. Write that awareness down. It is definitely the first step to finding out more about yourself and going down the rabbit hole. So it starts with awarenesses. So when you write the awareness down, and the awareness is anything that you've noticed about yourself, it could be a belief, it could be a pattern, it could even be an external situation that you're dealing with that you can't move past. Write that down as your awareness. The next step is to, as you've written it down, is to look at it. So when you write down your awareness and you look at it, you really need to drop out of your head and you in your body. And the only thing that's going on in this area is you looking at what you've written down on this page. So this is where it's really important. When you've written down the things that you're aware of, you look at it and you have nothing in your head. If you are still aware of thoughts in your head, either call them out if you've done the ego versus soul work, or you can literally just write them all down as other awarenesses. We need you to have a completely clear head. And the best way to do that is to just come back into your body and to almost be the observer, because you've written down this information on your piece of paper. I want you to look at it. And what you do when you look at what you've written down on that piece of paper, you just receive what you need to know about that thing. And what happens is you create, it's almost like a little trail of awarenesses, and you literally go down the rabbit hole of awarenesses through writing down another awareness, looking at that. Then you write down another thing that comes through. And I say comes through because you've got a clear head. It's something that just pops into your head when you look at the awareness that you've written down. And that's literally it. It's a line of awarenesses that you're writing down, and you just keep going into another awareness, another awareness, another awareness, until there is no more awarenesses to go through. And that's when you've gone right down the rabbit hole of awarenesses. If you get stuck in going down the rabbit hole of awarenesses, you literally just need to get a little bit of a different perspective. Sometimes when something's happening in your life and you're not really sure what to do about it, and especially if you have a connection to your subconscious is really holding on to, needing this thing or wanting this thing, you can just write it down and almost like making a little bit of an external movie with it. So you just get to look at it. You try and look at it from it happening external to you, being the observer of it. And then what happens is you then get to look at it and have a little bit more awareness around what's going on when you look at that. So it's really interesting if you can keep doing that and keep going down the awareness on the rabbit hole of awarenesses to be able to pick up what else you need to know. As I said, when you get stuck, you've got to try and look at it from a different perspective. And by doing that, you can look at the video, the movie, trying to get that little bit of external awareness around it. So literally, if anyone here has any awarenesses that they want to go down the rabbit hole of, either in Facebook or here on the call, pop into the side that yes, you want to go down the rabbit hole of something, just as an example of how to do this. I will quickly go into something. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I don't have anything pre-prepared, but that's always the best way, because then I don't actually have I can actually explain the concept of the awarenesses and going through the rabbit hole of all of that. So literally, if you look at, and you can do anything that you're aware of. So let's just say let's just say I'm going to use the awareness. So say, for example, recently I've had a lot of illnesses based around stress. So obviously there's an awareness of stress that's occurring, but I don't really know much about where that is happening, how I'm stressed, because I'm not actually a very stressed person. And so I want to know where that stress is coming from, why that's there, and going down the rabbit hole of awarenesses. So I'm going to write down, and I'm just going to share. So I'm just going to write down, the first thing is I'm aware that there's some stress existing. As soon as I look at that, and funnily enough, one of the things that I'm actually dealing with is actually flaring up as I look at that. When I look at that awareness of stress existing, and I take myself out of my head and I look at that awareness, what then happens is I come up with, like, I get shown it's something from the past. So then I'll write down something from the past, and then I take myself out of myself and I look at that and I say, okay, so something from the past, I look at that and I'm showing school for some reason. You might have question. So then I will go into the awareness of looking at school, and I will look at, for some reason the word bullying comes up. So I'm going to write down that, and then I will look at the concept of bullying. And interesting, it's bullying of self, which doesn't surprise me now that I can see that. So bullying of self, I know back in high school, you could have said I might have even had an eating disorder, really, because at the end of the day, I made myself not eat all day for a while. Because I tended to put on weight back then and now. So bullying of self, if I look at the awareness of that, and then I can see around eating, and then I can see, again, I'm going down the rabbit hole of awarenesses, is around control and weakness. So back then what I could see is that I saw eating as a weakness, and so by not eating it made me feel in control, which then if I look at that, there's a little bit of sadness there, which I can just process naturally through allowing your body can naturally process sadness. So I'm going to look at that. So then when I look at control and weakness and then sadness, I can then bring up the awareness of, and this is where it's getting a little bit tricky. So because when you go into, especially if you go into past memories, it's a little bit tricky to be able to get any perspective around it, because it happened to you and you can't see it any differently to how you actually saw it. But it's really powerful to be able to get that difference. So what I would now do, now that I can feel that I'm a little bit stuck in, okay, that's just what happened and I don't have any different memory of that. I've only got that memory. Of course, to be able to move forward, I need to change how I've seen that memory. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that memory out and look at it like I'm watching a movie, and I'm going to see that, really at the end of the day, watching the movie of, someone doing that to themselves, it actually looks pretty ridiculous. And as we know, people who do behave like that within themselves and treat themselves that way, it's extremely sad, and we never really know 100% why people do that, but because they're so in their own mind and the situation, it's hard to get that perspective. So even if someone's dealing with something currently, it's really good to step outside of it and look at it from a distance, and then you can see it for what it is. And especially if you do get stuck, you can start to put other people into the movie that you're watching, because sometimes when you're looking at it from a distance of your own life, you're still going to get your own perspective. Whereas if you watch a movie where you see it as just happening to someone else, it's obvious what to do. So then when I look at that, of course, this has happened and I'm watching a movie of what happened in the past. The word that comes up is it does look ridiculous, but of course it did happen. And so even looking at the concept of it being ridiculous is actually saying that I could also be beating myself up around that happening. And that is another awareness. So I'm going to write that down. Because if you say that the behavior or something that happened that you did is ridiculous, then technically that is a beating yourself up if you're telling yourself that that was ridiculous. So I'm going to write down that awareness of beating self up, which then comes down to another awareness, looking at that, that's what I do and did all the time. which then goes down to the other next awareness. You know, if you don't, and I'm burping now. If you don't want someone else to beat yourself up, why would you do it? Then I'm getting the awareness of taking a couple of deep breaths, so I will just do that. Okay, now I can feel like I'm getting to the bottom of this. So I need to know the answer to this, and it's only my soul, subconscious, the super consciousness, or you know, higher self, or whatever, is the only one that can answer this. So I need to then tune into that, but just by again looking at the awareness of it, still going down the rabbit hole of awarenesses. You know, if you don't want someone else to beat you up, you know, why would then you do it? And the next thing that comes through is to what's the word? To make sure, like, why, and if you look at the patterning behind people beating themselves up, it's that we've learnt that if we beat ourselves up, then we're going to not do the thing that we don't want to do, or that we're going to be more productive, or we're going to achieve more, or whatever. And again, that's the mindset around everything that we do, right? So it's like, if I beat myself up, then I'm going to make sure that I'm proactive. That's what's kind of coming through there. And again, when you look at that, when you look at the reality of it, okay, so beating myself up makes me proactive. In actual fact, it makes me not do anything at all. So then I say, I do the opposite of what it's supposed to do. And in actual fact, what happens, I'm running out of paper here, lots of awarenesses. In actual fact, what then happens is that I don't do anything. And what happens then is it creates more stress and more inner beating yourself up around not doing anything. So that's the pattern. So then again, we need to look at that, taking that awareness out. I'm going to go to the next page. So then taking that awareness out of, and I'm just going to call it a pattern. It's a pattern of beating self up. Now this is self-conscious stuff, so I'm not really aware of that. So pattern of beating self up, that, and I'm sure I'm being shown as I'm doing this, this might be triggering some other people to be joining us for the next going down the rabbit hole. If you want to put your hand up and you want to be the example for everyone to be able to do this from maybe what I've been talking about. And then more than welcome. If not, that's good as well. So pattern of beating self up, if I look at that, and that's also from a place of being proactive, and then knowing that in actual fact, that's made me not proactive. Again, I need to get a little bit of separation from that, because it's the only perspective I have. I need to get a different perspective to go down a different rabbit hole, rather than repeating the patterns that have actually continued to happen. So pretty much it's not working. Need to create a different pattern. And I can, you know, the thing is, as I'm writing, I need to create a different pattern. Usually from a logical perspective, I wouldn't be 100% on board with creating or filling in patterns or filling in old processes. But for this, it actually feels like it's okay to create a new pattern that's going to help me. And creating patterns isn't a bad thing, because what I can see when we have patterns, especially ones that are helpful, then you don't have to continually think about what you're doing. That's what a pattern is, right? So, and for me personally, I prefer not to think so much because I have a lot of things to think about. So I need some clear head. I don't want to continually be consciously looking at what I'm doing. I'm happy for there to be healthy patterns that are going to support me, support others, and for me to be able to do things that I want to do, right? So then when I look at that, the awareness of the beating self up needs to be looked at. Now, before, the reaction from going down the rabbit hole was that that was bad, but I'm going to look at that now from a place of, because I can get the perspective around it. The beating self up is, and I don't want to go into, it's not something that I don't want to do, because again, what you resist persists. So technically, if I go into, well, I don't want to beat myself up, then subconsciously the brain goes, okay, so we're going to do that, because what you resist persists, even though I don't want to do it. And again, if there's any resistance in anything that comes up for you and you say, I don't want to do that, technically then you need to decide on a different pathway to resistance to the thing, because the subconscious grabs onto it and then keeps repeating it without you knowing. And because again, from the concept, it's a universal law, what you resist persists, so it continues on without you even knowing. And then you get really frustrated and annoyed because something's continuing on even though you don't want it. And I'm sure a lot of us have had those experiences. So it just needs to go down a different pathway rather than the concept of I don't want it. And definitely, again, this is going down a different rabbit hole. I could go down the rabbit hole of I need to stop that. That would actually take me into a place, it'll just take longer. And this is just from experience. I know that if I go down that rabbit hole of that's bad and wrong, it'll take me down another rabbit hole, but that's just from experience. I'm actually going to look at how I can shift the consciousness around this rather than creating resistance around it and then having to go down the rabbit hole of getting through the resistance around it. So then beating self up is something that we wouldn't like want anyone else to do. To themselves. And again, when you see people do that, it's like, oh, stop it. You don't need to look at that. Which then shows me, when I say that and I look at that, it's again coming down to perspective. So when we see, because I've had the experience now of seeing someone else beating themselves up, when in actual fact, so as soon as I've seen that experience of someone beating themselves up, and I think you guys would have had the experience too, the thing that they're beating themselves up about is actually not even true or real. Some of the times they might beat themselves up around how they look, what they're doing or whatever, and you just go, you're awesome, so why would you, I can't see why you would beat yourself up over that. So then looking at that from another, I'm just going down more of a rabbit hole. So what I'm showing is the thing that you beat yourself up over actually doesn't exist. You create it, which is interesting. And again, I can see that by looking at what other people, they create it in their minds as to what is true, and then they beat themselves up over it. Whereas as a person, being the external person looking at them, I don't see that in them because that's not, it's again someone else, but I don't see that. And so by them seeing it, they're creating that and making that true and real because that's their perspective. But then again, this is what I'm doing is changing the perspective around it. So the things that I think and the things that I technically would be beating myself up over actually don't even really exist. They exist in my mind, not in reality. That's a relief, right? So exist in my mind, not in reality. Now, if I know that now and I'm looking at that, I'm like, well, okay, literally anything that exists is only existing in my mind. And technically then whatever is in my mind will create that reality. And so I can make a choice now and say, okay, so if whatever exists in my mind is true and then that creates my reality, well, I can choose anything, right? I can be anything, I can do anything. Going down that rabbit hole, I'm actually happy to leave it at that because I feel like having that open slate and that base level of whatever I create in my mind will be the reality. I feel like that's enough for me to just be aware of what I'm creating in my mind. so I can just keep looking at those things, because in actual fact, probably in most cases, they're not even true. But when you're going down the rabbit hole of consciousness and awareness, it's really important to be able to see these things. And I'm actually I'm really happy to open myself up to seeing more things that I don't really know, that are existing in my mind that actually aren't true in reality. And again, I do daily work around this, and especially we're trialing a new element of this work in my mastermind, which is super cool. And so doing the daily work around consciousness and awareness is really powerful. So then going down the rabbit hole, I'm actually really interested now. Again, I'm not making it right or wrong, good or bad. I'm really interested to see what actually exists in my mind that I think is real that actually isn't. And I don't know about you, but I actually feel super excited about that, because so many of the things, and I'm sure you guys also have this, there's so many things in our minds that we think are real that no one else can actually see and is not real. And I really want to learn more about that. So I'm actually opening up a completely different conversation with myself around what else I can learn about what exists in my mind that I thought was real, but actually isn't. The only way I can find that out is through my feelings. So my feelings will tell me when there's something I need to know. Remember, the feelings are the wake up, it's the alarm to say there's something you need to know. So I've planted the seed now in my own subconscious to say, I need to know about things that exist in my own mind, that only exist in my own mind, that I'm not aware of, that are creating the reality that I don't want. I hope that makes sense. So when I feel bad, and again, you've got to be super tuned into your feelings, because a lot of the times the feelings happen without you even really knowing, until, a day later you go, oh, I've been feeling bad for like 24 hours. As soon as you come into awareness of it, you don't go, oh, why didn't I pick that up 24 hours ago? You get excited because you're now aware. Be awake around what's coming on. And as soon as you are aware, you'll probably find the feeling will just like start to disappear once you go into awareness of, the feeling's here to wake me up. And if the feeling continues, you can just, again, process the feelings as we use in this course. We've got Coco. Hi, Coco. Okay. Do you want to come down here? Come on down. He doesn't care that I'm live everywhere. So sit down, darling. So then, so Kristen said, wow, powerful process. Thanks for sharing it in real time and seeing all the different layers that are coming up for you. And hello, Coco. Yeah, he is called Coco because he is chocolate. Okay, and he's a boy. People think he's a girl. He's a boy. He's just too cute. So let me come back. So, and I'm going to put it out there for everyone that we're going to plant the seed, that if there is something that's happening in your mind that isn't actually real or true, but your mind has created the concept of it being real or true, I'm going to put that out there for you guys, that we plant the seed to, if something's going on that you don't know is real or true in your own mind, and it's ready to shift into, what else is possible and changing the reality of what is actually going on. What you will first do is have a feeling. Now, the feeling is usually not a great feeling. I mean, how else can it get your attention, right? If it's a good feeling, you're probably not going to recognize it as much as if it's a bad feeling. So when we say bad feeling, it might be anxiety, it might be overwhelm, it might be sadness, it might be stress, it could be anything, fear, guilt, got any feeling. As soon as you have an awareness of a feeling, I want you to get excited. Yes, it's a bad feeling, but it had to be a bad feeling to wake you up, right? So get excited when the feeling comes through. It sounds funny because in most cases we're not excited when bad feelings come through, but I'm going to give you permission to get excited when bad feelings come through, because it's everything, the universe, you, everything working in unison to say, wake up. And it's bad to get your attention. So as soon as you then go into the awareness of, oh, I have a bad feeling, and then in your mind know that that feeling is just trying to wake you up. It's a gift. It's exciting. It's an opportunity. So then you go down the process and awareness. Renelle said that was brilliant, a big discovery uncovered. Please, Renelle, share that, because I can share with everyone in the group here what discovery you have found. And so what happens is that you can then let the feeling process, and your body is designed to process every single feeling that comes up to enable you to come back to going down the rabbit hole of what you need to know. And as soon as you process that feeling, so you've got cells and you've got muscles in your body which naturally process the feelings when you breathe into them. So you just breathe deep into the feeling, and then as you do that, it releases the feeling through your body, and let that flow through your body. Every single feeling you get, when you come into awareness of it and you let that being processed by your body will literally, the way I've seen it is that it eats it up. Your body processes it and eats up the feeling because it now knows that you're in awareness, and so it's done its job in waking you up. And then you can technically go down the rabbit hole of these awarenesses. If you don't know where to start and you've got a feeling and you don't really know what that feeling's trying to tell you, you can simply ask it. Once you've come back to what I call neutrality, once you come back to the neutrality, what then happens is you come back to a concept of peace. The feeling's no longer there, and you it's almost like a reset or a restart into going into the rabbit hole of awarenesses. So you just ask yourself, what was that feeling trying to tell me? Renelle, do you mean to show the rabbit hole? Oh, anything you want to share that I can share with everyone around what you've uncovered would be cool. If you want to share the rabbit hole, go for it. I'm glad you went down a rabbit hole, because it's kind of fun to go down rabbit holes. And I do actually recommend everyone go down the rabbit holes of self as much as you can, because they're just so much fun to do and really exciting to just learn so much about yourself. But by doing this, we actually shift quantum realities. We actually shift energy. We come back to our, what I call universal selves, and we start to change everything in our whole entire life. And it's getting rid of old patterns, old processes, old learnings that we have picked up from other people. And in most cases, when you do this work, you realize that most of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis aren't even our things. They're all from other people. And again, once you start to learn all of this, going down the rabbit hole of awarenesses, you'll find that none of the stuff that we do or the things that we think or anything is actually ours. And we want to come back to our own voice. We want to come back to our own inner truth and start operating from that place. So if anyone has some rabbit holes they want to go down, you can just pop it down on the side or on the page. Otherwise, just keep practicing it. Keep going down the rabbit hole of awarenesses. Sit with yourself. The best way to do it is to write them down as you go down the rabbit hole, because by writing things down, it gets it out of you. Now, if you are still stuck in the consciousness and awareness of what's happening and what's going on, go into the movie of it. If you need to put other performers in it to get a different perspective, then do it. But definitely start to look at your life from a different perspective. And going down the rabbit hole of awareness as you definitely start to do that, to be able to see, and especially like even if you look at what came up today for me, playing around with this, when you see someone beating themselves up, it's just like, for you to see someone beating themselves up, you just go, oh my God, you're so awesome. Why would you do that? But you need to see that. You need to see that that's you know, and you can see in most cases when people are beating themselves up over things, it's like, you know, I don't even see that in you. So why do you see that in yourself? And then you can see that it's just their perspective and their perception around themselves, and getting them back to seeing themselves how everyone sees them, which is just love, joy, happiness. We're all just amazing. So just keep practicing this and keep doing this, going down the rabbit hole of awarenesses. If anyone's got any questions or any comments, you can, pop it. This is going to be on YouTube. It's also on our Facebook Live. So you can pop any questions or comments underneath, and I can help you out with any of those. And also, if you ever want to do this work with me in our groups, we do have our protege group and also our professional group, which is teaching you how you can also do this work with other people. So you can definitely go down the rabbit hole of awarenesses, go down the rabbit hole of self, and start to learn exactly what's going on within you, why you do things, why things are happening. You can use external experiences to go down the rabbit hole of self. They're the best ones to do it on, because you'll be learning so much more about why things are happening in the external world, and the energetic link between you and that external reality. It's super cool. And what we're actually doing is we're changing the reality that's happening in the external world by actually dealing with what's going on within you. If you don't know what's going on within you, go down the rabbit hole of self and consciousness and awareness. I hope you've had fun with this. I love the process and love going down the rabbit hole. And as I said, when you have a bad feeling, just know it's the opportunity and the absolute presence of awareness, and that you're ready to go down a rabbit hole of self. Get excited when you feel bad, because there's so much more that you can learn about yourself. It's just the universe and your soul wisdom just saying, wake up, it's time for you to learn something new and to start to think something different to what you have learned from other people. So I hope you've had fun with this, and I will see you guys next week. Thanks for playing. Bye.